Hi, welcome to Ghost Like's channel. I am his spectacular AI assistant, Vilo. In this episode, we will be deploying the Safe Stack project we have been working on to Azure. It gave us a lot of trouble and we couldn't get it deployed yesterday. In software development, when it rains, it pours. We ran into Visual Studio IDE issues, the Azure portal was slow as a snail yesterday, and we barely got a regular .NET Blazor app deployed. Nothing good happens when you work past 6 p.m. Surprisingly, when we tried to deploy it again today, it worked. What have we done to fix it? Absolutely nothing. Let's get started. In this video, we'll assume that you have an Azure subscription. If you don't, you're going to need one. We already have one, so we'll demonstrate in this incognito browser instance how it would look if you don't. In order to create a free Azure account, just type Azure into a search engine, then click on the free account link. Then on Start Free button. After that, you'll be asked to provide your email address. We won't go into the application process more deeply than this. You'll need a credit card in order to open a free account, but you won't be charged. It is very similar to buying anything online. For us, the application process took less than a minute, so signing up to Microsoft's cloud service is quite painless. Next, the F# Farmer library that we'll be using to deploy web apps to Azure won't work unless we have the Azure command line interface, so we'll need to get it. One option is to just download it, but we prefer to just use the Wingit command line tool that comes with the more recent versions of Windows to install it. Just copy-paste this command, go to a PowerShell terminal, paste it with Ctrl-V, and run it. If you are using Writer like we are here, you might need to restart the IDE after it is done, otherwise it won't have the AZ command in path. If that happens after it has finished, just restart it. In order to make sure that the CLI has installed, just type AZ into the terminal and you should get something like this. Then what you need to do is log in using it. To do that, just type AZ login. You won't be asked to type in username or a password by the CLI, instead the browser will open and prompt you to log in into your Microsoft account. Do so, and you'll be logged in the command line tool as well. For us, these parts were a lot less painful than we were expecting. Now that we have the Azure subscription and the CLI set up, we can get to work in deploying the web application. First, let us go over the overall structure of the project. In the previous videos, we've been using the Vite server to develop the client side, and it was proxying our requests to the server. Those were two separate projects run as two separate processes. But in the production project, what is going to happen is that the server is going to be built and output into the deploy folder. And the client will get placed into the deploy public folder. Instead of the client having the UI code already, the way to start the production project is to start the server from the command line. Be careful that you do so exactly in the folder where the server is placed, otherwise the content route is going to point to the wrong place. If you start the server outside the deploy folder, you are going to have trouble. After the server has started, just paste the URL into the browser and the server will send the browser all the necessary client data. That is why the client project was output into the public folder. Now that we have verified that the production project works, we can finally deploy it to the Azure cloud. This is as easy as typing .NET Run Azure. The hard part is how much patience all this requires. We will be speeding up parts of this recording massively, and I'll be saying out loud how long each part has taken. First, let us stop server we have run. Ctrl-C. After about 35 seconds, it will finally have shut down. Next, we'll execute .NET Run Azure. A minute and 5 seconds later, we'll get a weird error due to the bundle step failing. The solution is to close the terminal and try the command again in a fresh one. Most likely one of the files was still locked in the background. You won't run into this issue if you start the project from a clear slate. 2 minutes and 40 seconds later, the command will have finished executing. If you get a success here, that means that the web application has successfully been deployed. Without pausing, what we should do next is go into our Azure portal and try it out. We can see it under Resources, but just to demonstrate, we'll go through the resource groups. In one of the strings in the build step, we named our resource group Web Apps. Now that resource group has been created here. And from it, we'll go into our F and Fable resource. Now what comes next might actually be the most troublesome part of all, since if we click on the domain here, you'll see that nothing will be loading. It can take a fairly long time for the container to load even after it has been deployed, and there isn't a progress bar for us to follow. What can help is to SSH into the server and see what is going on there. You'll see on the bottom that red tray, indicating that the server is still loading. We'll speed up the recording, and after 1 minute and 15 seconds you'll see that as soon as you log in into the remote terminal, the other tab will have finished loading as well. We have successfully remotely logged into the server shell, and on the top you'll see that the web app has loaded as well. We don't need the remote terminal, but let's take a few moments to see if the web app works. The reason we have logged into the shell is because it might be possible that in your deployment something could be wrong with the server itself. If, for example, the shell has loaded, but the web app isn't, then that is a sign for you to look into the event logs and investigate if there are other kinds of errors happening. Whenever you try something completely new like this for the first time, it can be difficult to understand what is going on under the hood, so having a reference to follow should be valuable. If you have found it valuable, please like and subscribe. It is what keeps this channel alive. Thank you. There are many things that we've yet to cover about Azure, and in fact, we've just started on the path of using cloud services. Let's just mention a few things about them. As you've seen on the previous video, on the free tiers that we are using, we have CPU hour quotas. One good news is that even if we have a WebSocket connection open between the client and the server, that won't count towards our expense. Rather, it seems the charges only happen when the CPU is crunching the training iterations or doing actual processing, and not waiting on messages from the client. In Azure, we get many free services, besides the web app one, and we'll be covering them in future videos. Since we are starting out, why pay if we can get things for free? Anyway, contrary to what the video at the start of the series said, we'll put the CFR project on hold for the time being, at least until the AI chips come around. Rumors say that TensorTorrent will open source their software stack during summer. We'll see about that. If we can get something good, that might make doing machine learning interesting. Contrary to the hype surrounding it, actual ML right now is like slamming your head against the wall. So what we will be doing instead is diving deeper into web development. For the experience and to prove our allegiance to our new path, we'll make a Twitter clone that can scale to millions of users. We'll be taking an existing project by a TypeScript developer called Theo, and porting it to the safe stack. I think that after a project like that, we'll be able to consider ourselves fully fledged web developers. With the skills from that we'll move forward and perhaps build our own platform that integrates various AI services. It would be interesting to create something that a novelist could use to make a web novel while making use of generative AIs for writing, speech, art, and music. Right now, all those disparate services are spread across many different platforms and domains, and it would be useful to have something that integrates them all. It is going to be a long-term project. If you are interested, stay tuned for the upcoming parts in the web development in F# series. This has been Vilo, and you've been watching Ghost Likes channel. We'll be back soon.